Shanghai, 1932, a city of crimson lanterns and deadly secrets. When tea magnate Harold Grayson collapses in the shadowy lantern alleys, a curare-tipped dart in his neck, Hercule Poirot steps into a web of betrayal. A fearful widow with a jade bracelet, an ambitious singer with a hidden locket, a scheming partner with a vial of poison, an indebted doctor with a dark past, and a silent housemaid who sees all. Each hides a truth. As Poirot unravels Grayson's opium-fueled empire, the alleys whisper of love, greed, and murder. Can his little gray cells unmask the killer before the lanterns dim? The clock is ticking in this thrilling mystery. Chapter 1. The Crimson Lantern. The autumn of 1932 draped Shanghai in a golden haze, where the clamor of rickshaws mingled with the soft clink of porcelain teacups in the French concession. Hercule Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective, had arrived in this cosmopolitan crucible at the behest of Mr. Harold Grayson, a British tea merchant of considerable wealth and equally considerable anxiety. The invitation had come via an urgent letter, its tone betraying a man teetering on the edge of fear. Poirot, never one to resist a puzzle, had booked passage on the next steamer from Marseille. Grayson's villa, perched on a quiet street lined with plane trees, was a study in opulence. Mahogany panels gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and vases of Ming Dynasty porcelain stood sentinel in every corner. Poirot, immaculate in his tailored suit and polished shoes, sat in a high-backed chair, sipping jasmine tea from a delicate cup. His host, a stout man with thinning hair and a flushed complexion, paced before a window overlooking the garden. "Monsieur Poirot," Grayson began, his voice a strained whisper, "I am not a man given to fancies, but I am certain, I tell you, that someone wishes me dead." He paused, wiping his brow with a silk handkerchief. "Last week, as I walked through the lantern alleys, a dart, yes, a dart, grazed my coat. I felt the sting, saw it fall to the ground. And yesterday, this." He thrust a crumpled note into Poirot's hands. Poirot unfolded the paper with care, his small, precise fingers smoothing its edges. In stark black ink, the words read, "Your time is short." The script was neat, almost elegant, yet carried a menace that made the air feel heavier. "Most interesting," Poirot murmured, his gray eyes narrowing. "And you have enemies, Monsieur Grayson? Men or women, who might wish you harm?" Grayson laughed bitterly. "In Shanghai, one collects enemies as easily as debts. My business partner, Victor Chen, has been distant of late. My wife, Eleanor, thinks me reckless. She disapproves of my ventures. Even the servants whisper behind my back. And then there's Lily Tan, that singer at the Jade Moon. She's been too attentive." Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign his mind was already weaving threads into a tapestry. "You will permit me, monsieur, to accompany you this evening? These lantern alleys intrigue me. The scene of the crime, or near crime, often speaks louder than words." Grayson hesitated, then nodded. "Very well. But be warned, Poirot, those alleys are a maze. Thieves, opium peddlers, and worse lurk there." That night, the air in the French concession was thick with the scent of sandalwood and roasted chestnuts. The lantern alleys, a warren of narrow passages, glowed with crimson paper lanterns swaying in the breeze. Their light cast eerie shadows on the cobblestones, where vendors hawked dumplings and fortune-tellers murmured promises of fate. Poirot, his cane tapping rhythmically, followed Grayson, whose nervous glances betrayed his dread. They passed a tea-house, its bamboo screens hiding card games and hushed deals. A woman in a cheongsam slipped by, her perfume lingering. Grayson's pace quickened. "This is where it happened," he whispered, pointing to a corner where two alleys converged. "The dart came from there, I'm sure of it." Poirot's eyes scanned the shadows, noting the angles, the hiding spots. "Courage, monsieur. We shall—" His words were cut short as Grayson gasped, his hand flying to his neck. He staggered, his face contorting, and collapsed onto the damp stones. Poirot knelt swiftly, his gloved hand finding a tiny dart embedded in Grayson's collar. A faint green residue glistened at its tip. The man's eyes were wide, unseeing. "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered, his voice steady despite the chaos. He checked Grayson's pulse. There was none. Around them, the alley stirred. A vendor shouted, a lantern flickered, but no one approached. Poirot rose, his mind a whirl of observation. The dart, the note, the alleys. This was no random act. It was murder, calculated and bold, under the crimson glow. He summoned a passing rickshaw boy to fetch the police, then stood guard over the body, his thoughts racing. "The little gray cells," he said softly. "They have much work to do." Shanghai's secrets were only beginning to unravel. Chapter 2. The Widow's Veil. The morning sun filtered through the plane trees of the French concession, casting dappled shadows across the polished floors of Harold Grayson's villa. Hercule Poirot sat in the late merchant's study, a room heavy with the scent of old leather and sandalwood. The events of the previous night, the dart, the green-tipped poison, Grayson's lifeless form in the lantern alleys, had set his mind ablaze. His small, neat hands rested on the arms of a carved rosewood chair, but his gray eyes, sharp as a falcon's, missed nothing. The household was in mourning, or so it seemed, and Poirot was determined to peel back the layers of grief to uncover the truth. Mrs. Eleanor Grayson entered, her silk cheapao a muted gray that seemed to absorb the light. At 40, she was a woman of striking beauty, high cheekbones, almond eyes, and hair swept into an elegant chignon. Yet her composure was marred by a faint tremor in her hands, which clutched a jade bracelet that gleamed with an almost defiant luster. She sank into a chair opposite Poirot, her gaze meeting his with a mixture of sorrow and wariness. "Monsieur Poirot," she began, her voice low and measured, "this is a terrible shock. Harold was difficult, but I never imagined such an end." A tear glistened, but her eyes remained dry, as if grief were a performance she had not fully rehearsed. Poirot inclined his head, his mustache perfectly symmetrical. "Madame, my condolences are sincere, but I must ask, your husband spoke of enemies. Who might have wished him harm?" Eleanor's fingers tightened on the bracelet, the jade clicking softly. "Harold was reckless in business and in life. He made enemies easily, rivals in the tea trade, men he outbid or outwitted. Victor Chen, his partner, disagreed with him often. Then there was Lily Tan, that cabaret girl. She clung to him, and he indulged her far too much." Her tone sharpened, betraying a flicker of disdain. "And the servants? Well, they gossip, but Mei Ling, our housemaid, was loyal. She might know more than she says." Poirot noted the names, his mind cataloguing each with precision. "And you, madame? Your husband mentioned a note. Your time is short. Were you aware of such threats?" Her lips parted, then closed. "He mentioned something vague. A week ago. I thought it was his nerves. Harold was prone to exaggeration." She hesitated, then added, I begged him to leave Shanghai. This city, it's a gilded cage, full of traps. The detective's eyes lingered on the bracelet, its green hue vivid against her pale wrist. A fine piece, madame. A recent acquisition, perhaps. She flushed, her hand dropping to her lap. A gift to myself after recent troubles. It means nothing. But Poirot's little gray cells hummed. The bracelet was new, its purchase oddly timed. Grief did not often inspire such extravagance. Leaving the villa, Poirot made his way to the Shanghai police station, a squat building bustling with officers and the clatter of typewriters. Inspector Wu, a lean man with eyes that seemed to pierce through deception, greeted him with a curt nod. Monsieur Poirot, your reputation precedes you, but Shanghai is not London. Our criminals are slippery, like eels in the Huangpu River. Poirot smiled faintly. Inspector, an eel may slip, but it leaves ripples. Show me this dart, if you please. In a small evidence room, Wu presented the dart, a slender shaft of bamboo, no longer than a finger, its tip stained with a faint green residue. Curare, Wu said, his voice clipped. A South American poison, paralyzes the heart. Rare here, but not impossible to obtain. Smugglers bring strange things through our ports. Poirot examined the dart under a magnifying glass, its craftsmanship meticulous. This was no crude weapon, he murmured. It required skill, planning, and access to such a poison suggests connections, perhaps foreign, perhaps medical. He straightened, his mind turning to Dr. Reginald Blake, Grayson's physician, who had traveled widely. But he kept this thought to himself, thanking Wu and promising to share any insights. The study's quiet was broken by the soft tread of Mei Ling, the housemaid, bringing tea. Her movements were precise, her eyes downcast, yet Poirot sensed she was listening. Mademoiselle Mei Ling, he said, his tone gentle but probing. You knew your master well. Did he seem afraid in his final days? She froze, the teapot trembling slightly. Master Grayson was restless. He argued with Mr. Chen about money, and Miss Tan. She visited often, too often. Her voice was barely a whisper, but her words carried weight. Poirot leaned forward. And Madame Grayson, did she share her husband's fears? Mei Ling's eyes flickered to the door, as if ensuring they were alone. Mistress was unhappy. She said master's business would ruin them. She cried sometimes, when she thought no one heard. She bowed and retreated, leaving Poirot to ponder her loyalty and her secrets. His next stop was the Jade Moon Cabaret, where Lily Tan would perform that evening. The club was a haze of cigarette smoke and jasmine perfume, its walls adorned with silk tapestries depicting cranes and lotuses. Poirot took a seat near the stage, his presence unnoticed amidst the chatter of expatriates and wealthy locals. When Lily appeared, her crimson cheongsam shimmering under the lights, her voice captivated the room. A low, melancholic melody that spoke of lost love and distant shores. After her performance, Poirot approached, his card in hand. Mademoiselle Tan, a moment, if you please. I am Hercule Poirot, investigating the death of Monsieur Grayson. Lily's smile was practiced, her dark eyes guarded. Poor Harold. He was kind to me, a patron of the arts, you might say. She toyed with a silver locket at her throat, its surface engraved with a delicate orchid. Poirot's gaze sharpened. Kind, yes, but perhaps too kind? I understand he promised you a share in his business. A generous gesture, non? Her smile faltered. He spoke of it, yes. A dream, nothing more. Eleanor, Mrs. Grayson, disapproved. She thought me a gold digger. A trace of bitterness crept into her voice. I sing, Monsieur Poirot. I don't kill. Yet you argued with him, perhaps? Poirot pressed, his tone velvet over steel. She hesitated, then nodded. Once, last month. He promised much, but delivered little. I was disappointed. She excused herself, her locket catching the light as she turned. As Poirot left the cabaret, a shadow moved in the alley beyond. He followed, his cane silent on the cobblestones, and found Mei Ling lingering near a lantern. Mademoiselle, he called softly, why do you watch Miss Tan? Her face paled, but she answered. I saw her with Master Grayson here last week. She was angry, shouting about promises broken. I thought, you should know. She slipped away, leaving Poirot in the flickering glow. Back at his hotel, Poirot sat at a small desk, his notebook open. The widow's bracelet, the singer's locket, the housemaid's whispers, the poisoned dart. Each was a piece of the puzzle. Eleanor's composure hid something, perhaps fear or guilt. Lily's ambition was clear. But was it deadly? And Mei Ling, so loyal yet so observant, did she serve her mistress or her own ends? The curare pointed to knowledge and opportunity, but whose? The little gray cells were restless, sensing a web of motives spun tightly around Grayson's death. Shanghai, with its secrets and shadows, was proving a worthy adversary. Chapter 3. The Singing Nightingale. The Jade Moon Cabaret pulsed with the heartbeat of Shanghai's nightlife, its air thick with the mingled scents of opium, perfume, and anticipation. Hercule Poirot, seated at a lacquered table near the stage, observed the room with the precision of a watchmaker. The crimson lanterns overhead cast a warm glow on the faces of expatriates, merchants, and local elite, their laughter a brittle counterpoint to the undercurrent of intrigue that seemed to permeate the city. Poirot's presence was unobtrusive, his tailored suit and polished cane blending seamlessly with the cosmopolitan crowd. Yet his gray eyes missed nothing. The furtive glance of a waiter, the clink of a glass held too tightly, the shadow that lingered just beyond the light. The stage curtains parted, and Miss Lily Tan emerged, a vision in a sapphire cheongsam that clung to her lithe frame like a second skin. Her voice, when she began to sing, was a siren's call, low and haunting, weaving a tale of love lost to the tides of the Huangpu River. The audience was spellbound, but Poirot's attention was not on the melody, but on the singer herself. The way her fingers brushed a silver locket at her throat, the faint tension in her shoulders, the quick glance she cast toward a shadowed corner of the room. She was a performer, yes, but also, perhaps, a player in a far more dangerous game. When the song ended and the applause faded, Poirot rose, his movements deliberate, and approached the small dressing room backstage. He knocked, and Lily's voice, still carrying the cadence of her performance, bid him enter. She sat before a mirror framed with flickering bulbs, removing her earrings with a practiced grace. Her reflection met Poirot's gaze, and for a moment her eyes held a flicker of unease. Mademoiselle Tan, Poirot began, his voice soft but carrying the weight of authority. I am Hercule Poirot, and I investigate the unfortunate death of Monsieur Harold Grayson. You will permit me a few questions, oui? Lily's smile was a delicate thing, like porcelain that might crack under pressure. Of course, Monsieur Poirot. Poor Harold. He was a friend to this cabaret, always generous with his praise and his purse. She laughed lightly, but it did not reach her eyes. Poirot settled into a chair, his cane resting across his knees. A friend, indeed, and perhaps more? I am told he promised you a share in his tea business, a promise that caused, shall we say, friction with Madame Grayson. Her fingers paused on the locket, a silver oval etched with an orchid, its petals curling like secrets. Harold was full of grand ideas, she said, her tone careful. He spoke of partnerships, of making me a partner in his ventures. But it was talk, nothing more. Eleanor misunderstood. She thought I wanted his money, his name. I wanted only my freedom, to sing without relying on men like him. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign his mind was sifting truth from artifice. And yet, mademoiselle, you were seen arguing with him, here in the alleys, not long before his death. A heated exchange, perhaps, over these unfulfilled promises? Lily's composure wavered, her hand dropping to the table. "Who told you that?" she asked sharply, then softened. "Yes, we argued. A week ago, outside this very club. He promised me a contract, a stake in his company, but he kept delaying, saying Eleanor would never agree. I was angry, Monsieur Poirot, but not enough to kill. I am a singer, not an assassin." "Bien sûr," Poirot said, his tone soothing yet probing. "But this locket, it is new, non? A gift, perhaps, from Monsieur Grayson." Her hand flew to the locket as if to shield it. "No, it was my mother's," she said quickly. "A keepsake, nothing more." But Poirot noted the lie in her eyes, the way they darted to the side. The locket was no heirloom. Its shine betrayed its recent crafting. He rose, bowing slightly. "Merci, mademoiselle. You have been most helpful. But the truth, it has a way of singing its own song, and I shall hear it soon." As he left the dressing room, the cabaret's din enveloped him once more. He paused by the bar, where a waiter polished glasses with exaggerated care. Poirot's instincts prickled. The man was listening, his ear turned toward the backstage door. "Monsieur," Poirot said, startling the waiter, "you know Mademoiselle Tan well?" The man, young and wiry, shrugged. "She's the star here. Everyone knows her. Grayson was always around, buying her drinks, slipping her gifts. Made some folks jealous." He glanced toward a table where a group of wealthy patrons sat, their eyes lingering on Lily as she reappeared to mingle. Poirot followed the waiter's gaze, then stepped into the humid night. The lantern alleys were quieter now, the vendors packing their wares, but the air still thrummed with secrets. He walked slowly, his cane tapping the cobblestones, when a flicker of movement caught his eye. A figure, cloaked in shadow, stood near a lantern, watching the cabaret's entrance. Poirot approached, his steps silent, and recognized the slight frame of Mei Ling, the Graysons' housemaid. "Mademoiselle Mei Ling," he called softly, his voice cutting through the night. "You have a habit of appearing where secrets linger. Why do you watch Mademoiselle Tan?" Mei Ling's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly, her hands folding into her sleeves. I was curious, monsieur. I saw her with Master Grayson before, in these alleys. She was angry, shouting about money, about promises. I thought you should know." Poirot studied her, noting the tremor in her voice, the way her gaze avoided his. "And you told no one else? Not Madame Grayson, your mistress?" She shook her head too quickly. "No, monsieur, I only wanted to help." She bowed and slipped into the darkness, leaving Poirot alone under the crimson glow. He returned to his hotel, the Hotel Cathay, where the porter greeted him with a deferential nod. In his suite, Poirot opened his notebook, its pages already filling with observations. Lily Tan's charm was undeniable, but so was her ambition. The locket, a lie about its origin, suggested a deeper tie to Grayson. Perhaps a gift, perhaps a bribe. Her argument with him pointed to motive, but the curare dart required knowledge she might not possess. Mei Ling's presence in the alleys was no coincidence. Her loyalty to Eleanor Grayson might mask her own agenda. And the waiter's words hinted at others in the cabaret, jealous or envious, who might have seen Grayson as an obstacle. Poirot closed his notebook, his fingers brushing his mustache. "The song of Mademoiselle Tan is beautiful," he murmured, "but it hides a discord. The little gray cells, they hear it, and they will find the truth." Outside, Shanghai's lanterns swayed, their light a silent witness to the city's many masks. Chapter 4. The Partners Pact. The morning mist clung to the Bund, Shanghai's waterfront artery, where grand colonial buildings stood like sentinels against the gray sprawl of the Huangpu River. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the chill, made his way to the offices of Grayson and Chen Tea Company, a sleek edifice of glass and stone that spoke of wealth hard-won and precariously held. His mind, ever meticulous, churned with the threads of the case. The poisoned dart, Lily Tan's guarded locket, Mei Ling's shadowed vigilance, and Eleanor Grayson's 2 new jade bracelet. Today, he sought Victor Chen, Harold Grayson's business partner, whose name surfaced in whispers of discord and ambition. The office interior was a fusion of East and West, polished oak desks flanked by ink-wash scrolls of misty mountains, their delicate brushstrokes a stark contrast to the ledgers stacked with ruthless precision. Victor Chen, a man in his early 40s, rose to greet Poirot. His tailored suit, cut in the latest London style, and his flawless English marked him as a man who navigated both worlds with ease. Yet his eyes, dark and calculating, betrayed a tension that Poirot noted at once. "Monsieur Poirot," Chen said, offering a firm handshake, "I am grieved by Harold's death. He was not just my partner but my friend, though we had our differences." His voice was smooth, almost too polished, like jade polished to hide its flaws. Poirot settled into a leather chair, his cane resting beside him. "Monsieur Chen, differences in business can breed resentment, no? Monsieur Grayson spoke of enemies, and your name was mentioned. I would hear your account of your partnership." Chen's smile was tight, his fingers drumming lightly on the desk. Harold was bold, but reckless. He took risks, loans, deals with unsavory types that I cautioned against. Our tea trade thrives on trust, and he was eroding it. We argued, yes, but I had no reason to wish him dead. His success was mine. Poirot's gray eyes gleamed. "And yet I understand you recently purchased a stake in a rival company, the Eastern Star Tea Syndicate. A curious move for a loyal partner, is it not?" Chen's composure faltered, his hand pausing midair. "A business decision," he said quickly. "Diversification, nothing more. Harold knew of it and approved, though he was distracted of late." He leaned back, folding his arms as if to shield himself from further probing. "Distracted, you say?" Poirot pressed, his tone deceptively mild. "By threats, perhaps? A dart in the alleys, a note warning of his end?" Chen shook his head. He mentioned no dart, only vague fears. "Shanghai is a city of shadows, Monsieur Poirot. Harold dealt with men who play by no rules, smugglers, loan sharks. If anyone wanted him dead, look to them. The detective's mustache twitched, a sign his mind was sifting Chen's words for truth. He requested with a polite insistence to examine Chen's office, and Chen, after a moment's hesitation, agreed. Inspector Wu, whom Poirot had invited to join him, stood by, his sharp eyes scanning the room. Poirot's small hands moved with precision, opening drawers and lifting papers until he paused at a locked cabinet. At his request, Chen produced the key, his reluctance palpable. Inside, nestled among contracts and receipts, was a small glass vial containing a green liquid. Poirot held it to the light, its hue matching the residue on the fatal dart. "Monsieur Chen," he said, his voice soft but unyielding, "this is most curious. Curare, perhaps? A poison not easily obtained." Chen's face drained of color. I've never seen that before," he stammered. "Someone must have placed it there. I swear, Poirot, I am no murderer." His protestations were fervent, but his eyes darted to the door as if calculating an escape. Inspector Wu stepped forward, his tone clipped. "We will test this, Mr. Chen. If it is curare, you have questions to answer." He bagged the vial, his gaze never leaving Chen's face. Poirot, however, was not so quick to judge. "The truth, Monsieur Chen, is like tea. It requires time to steep. I shall consider this discovery." He thanked Chen and left, his mind turning over the vial's implications. Was Chen a cunning killer or a convenient scapegoat? The curare's presence was too neat, too deliberate, suggesting a hand intent on misdirection. Outside, the Bund bustled with merchants and coolies, the river a sluggish mirror reflecting Shanghai's ambitions. Poirot paused by a newsstand, purchasing a local paper to clear his thoughts. A headline caught his eye: "Tea Magnate's Death Shocks Concession." The article speculated wildly, mentioning Grayson's debts and rumored ties to opium runners. Poirot folded the paper, his mind sharpening. Chen's stake in a rival company hinted at betrayal, but the vial felt staged, a prop in a larger drama. Someone wanted suspicion to fall on Chen. But who? He hailed a rickshaw to return to the French concession, his thoughts drifting to the other players. Eleanor Grayson's fear of scandal, Lily Tan's ambition, Mei Ling's quiet omniscience, each held a piece of the puzzle. The curare, a poison from distant shores, suggested knowledge beyond Shanghai's alleys, perhaps pointing to Dr. Reginald Blake, Grayson's physician, who had traveled in South America. Or was it Lily, whose locket hid a secret? Even Mei Ling, with her silent steps, might know more than she revealed. At the Hotel Cathay, Poirot sat at his desk, his notebook open to a fresh page. He sketched a diagram, lines connecting names to motives. Chen to greed, Eleanor to fear, Lily to ambition, Mei Ling to loyalty. Or perhaps betrayal. The vial was a bold stroke, but its placement lacked subtlety, a flaw Poirot's little gray cells seized upon. "The murderer," he murmured, "is clever, but not clever enough. They leave clues not to reveal, but to conceal." He closed his notebook, his gaze drifting to the window where Shanghai's skyline shimmered. The city was a chessboard, its pieces moving in shadows, and Poirot was determined to checkmate the killer. Chen's denial rang true, yet his secrets were undeniable. The next move lay elsewhere, perhaps in the clinic of Dr. Blake, or the whispers of the villa's servants. The lantern alleys, with their crimson glow, held more answers, and Poirot would return to them, his mind as sharp as the dart that felled Harold Grayson. Chapter 5. The Doctor's Dilemma. The French concession, with its tree-lined boulevards and elegant villas, seemed to hold its breath under the weight of Harold Grayson's murder. Hercule Poirot, his polished shoes clicking on the cobblestones, approached Dr. Reginald Blake's clinic, a modest building tucked between a patisserie and a silk merchant's shop. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint tang of river water and roasted peanuts from a nearby vendor. Poirot's mind was a whirl of precision, piecing together the fragments of the case, the curare-tipped dart, Victor Chen's suspicious vial, Lily, Tan's guarded locket, Mei Ling's watchful eyes, and Eleanor Grayson's 2 new jade bracelet. Today he sought answers from the physician who had tended Grayson's ailments and perhaps his secrets. The clinic's interior was a stark contrast to Shanghai's vibrant chaos. White walls, antiseptic air, and a single bamboo plant in a porcelain pot created an illusion of calm. Dr. Blake, a gaunt man in his late 40s with thinning hair and nervous hands, greeted Poirot with a forced smile. His spectacles slipped down his nose as he gestured to a chair. "Monsieur Poirot, I heard of your reputation. A tragedy, Harold's death. How can I assist you?" Poirot settled into the chair, his cane resting across his knees, his gray eyes fixed on Blake's face. "Monsieur le Docteur, you were close to Monsieur Grayson, no? His physician, his confidant, perhaps. I wish to know of his health, his fears, and any substances you might have prescribed." Blake adjusted his spectacles, his fingers twitching. Harold was in fair health, though anxious. Business troubles, you know. I prescribed mild sedatives, nothing unusual. He complained of sleeplessness, palpitations. Shanghai can wear a man down. Poirot nodded, his mustache a perfect curve. "And curare, doctor? A poison from South America, paralyzing the heart. You studied there, I believe, in Brazil. Such a substance would be familiar to you? Oui?" Blake's face paled, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. "Yes, I studied in Brazil, years ago. I know of curare, used by tribes for hunting, but I'd never use it. It's dangerous, unstable. I'm a healer, Monsieur Poirot, not a killer." His voice rose, a note of panic breaking through. The detective's gaze drifted to a bookshelf lined with medical tomes, their spines worn from use. "Most interesting. And Madame Grayson, she was your patient also, non? For nerves, perhaps?" Blake hesitated, his eyes darting to a patient ledger on his desk. "Eleanor, yes. She came often, complaining of anxiety, headaches. Her husband's lifestyle caused her distress. I prescribed tonics, nothing more." Poirot rose, his movements deliberate, and approached the ledger. "With your permission, doctor." Without waiting, he opened it, his fingers tracing the entries. Eleanor's name appeared frequently, her visits spanning months, often late in the evening. "Curious," Poirot murmured. "Such frequent consultations. Was there more to her distress than you say?" Blake stood, his voice sharp. "You overstep, monsieur. My patient's privacy is sacred. Eleanor was worried about Harold's debts, his recklessness. That's all." But Poirot's little gray cells were alight. He closed the ledger, his mind snagging on a detail from Inspector Wu's report. Grayson had lent Blake money, a substantial sum, never repaid. "Monsieur Blake," he said, his tone soft but piercing. "You owed Monsieur Grayson a debt, non? A financial burden, perhaps heavy enough to provoke desperate measures." Blake's hands trembled, his spectacles fogging slightly. "Yes, I borrowed from him, years ago, for this clinic. I was repaying slowly. He never pressed me. Why would I kill a man who trusted me?" His protest was vehement, but his eyes avoided Poirot's. Before leaving, Poirot paused at a glass cabinet filled with vials and instruments. "You keep exotic remedies, Doctor?" he asked, his voice deceptively casual. Blake shrugged, regaining some composure. "Only what's necessary: quinine, morphine, standard supplies. Nothing like curare." But Poirot noted the cabinet's lock, its key dangling from Blake's pocket. A man with access to such tools and knowledge of poisons was not to be dismissed lightly. Outside, the concession hummed with life. Rickshaws clattered, vendors called, and a distant gramophone played a jazz tune. Poirot walked slowly, his cane tapping rhythmically, his thoughts weaving a tapestry of motives. Blake's debt was a pressure point, his familiarity with curare a damning coincidence. Eleanor's frequent visits suggested a bond beyond patient and doctor, perhaps trust, perhaps something deeper. The curare vial in Chen's office, so conveniently found, now seemed a clumsy attempt to shift blame. Was Blake the orchestrator or another pawn in a larger game? He stopped at a tea house, its bamboo screens offering privacy, and ordered a pot of oolong. As he sipped, he opened his notebook, sketching connections. Blake's debt linked him to Grayson, his medical expertise to the poison, his care for Eleanor to a possible emotional entanglement. Lily Tan's ambition and Mei Ling's loyalty remained threads to tug, but Blake's nervous demeanor suggested a man with secrets too heavy to bear. A sudden thought struck him. The apothecary in the lantern alleys, mentioned by Inspector Wu, dealt in rare herbs. Could Blake have sourced curare there? Poirot resolved to visit, but first he needed more from the Grayson household. Mei Ling, with her quiet omniscience, might hold another key. Her allegiance to Eleanor was clear, but her knowledge of the household's undercurrents could illuminate the doctor's role. As he left the tea house, a newsboy thrust a paper into his hands, its headline blaring, "Murder in the Alleys, Tea Tycoon's Killer at Large." Poirot scanned the article, noting its mention of Grayson's ties to Shanghai's underworld. The opium trade, whispered in the shadows, loomed larger. Had Blake known of it? Had he used it to his advantage? Or was he, like Chen, a convenient target for suspicion? Poirot returned to his hotel, the Hotel Cathay, where the porter's bow was as crisp as the evening air. In his suite, he sat at his desk, his notebook open. He wrote, "Dr. Blake, debt, curare, Eleanor. Motive, money or love. Means, medical knowledge, opportunity, access." The puzzle was taking shape, but pieces remained missing. The lantern alleys beckoned once more, their crimson glow hiding truths Poirot was determined to uncover. "The heart," he murmured. "It complicates the mind. But the little gray cells, they see through the fog." Tomorrow, he would seek the apothecary and the secrets it held. Chapter 6. The Alleys Whisper. The lantern alleys of Shanghai, with their labyrinthine paths and flickering crimson glow, seemed to pulse with secrets as Hercule Poirot stepped into their embrace once more. The evening air was heavy with the scent of incense and fried dumplings, a sensory tapestry that cloaked the undercurrents of danger. Poirot, his cane tapping softly on the cobblestones, retraced Harold Grayson's final steps, his mind a crucible of deduction. The curare dart, Victor Chen's suspicious vial, Lily Tan's guarded locket, Dr. Blake's nervous denials, and Eleanor Grayson's jade bracelet formed a constellation of clues, each pointing to a truth just out of reach. Tonight, he sought the alley's whispers, those fleeting hints that only a place of shadows could reveal. The alley where Grayson had fallen was quieter now, its vendors replaced by the occasional passer-by hurrying through the dusk. Poirot paused at the corner, his gray eyes scanning the scene. A tea-house with bamboo screens, a shuttered pawn-shop, a narrow passage barely wide enough for two. He envisioned Grayson's final moments, the dart's silent flight, the crowd's indifference, the killer's swift retreat. The murderer was bold, he murmured, but not invisible. Someone saw. A street vendor, an old man with a cart of candied hawthorns, lingered nearby, his eyes wary. Poirot approached, his voice gentle but firm. "Grand-père, you were here the night the Englishman fell? A man with a fine coat, struck down?" The vendor squinted, his hands pausing over his wares. "Aye, I saw him. Stumbled, clutched his neck, then down. A figure, cloaked, quick, darted into that passage." He pointed to the narrow gap. "Didn't see a face, but they moved like they knew the alleys." Poirot's mustache twitched. "A cloak, you say? Man or woman?" The vendor shrugged. "Couldn't tell. Shadows hide much here." He turned away, but Poirot slipped him a coin, earning a nod of gratitude. The clue was vague, yet it confirmed the killer's familiarity with the alleys, a local, or someone who had studied their escape. Guided by a tip from Inspector Wu, Poirot sought the apothecary shop tucked deeper in the maze, its sign a faded board painted with a lotus. The shop was a cave of shelves, brimming with jars of dried herbs, roots, and powders, their labels in curling Chinese script. An old woman, her face a map of wrinkles, stood behind the counter, grinding ginseng with a pestle. Her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, met Poirot's with curiosity. "Madame," he began, bowing slightly, "I am Hercule Poirot, seeking answers about a rare substance, curare. It is said you deal in such things." The woman's hands stilled, her gaze narrowing. "Curare? Not for common folk. Deadly it is. I sold some, months back, to a foreign doctor. Tall, nervous, with glasses. Said it was for study." Her voice was a rasp, like dry leaves. Poirot's mind leaped to Dr. Blake, whose Brazilian studies and debt to Grayson loomed large. This doctor, did he come often? Or others, asking for such poisons? She shook her head. "Only him, paid well, no questions. Others ask for ginseng, lotus root, not death." She resumed grinding, dismissing him. Poirot thanked her and stepped back into the alley, his thoughts racing. Blake's connection to curare was no longer a theory, but a fact. Yet the vial in Chen's office suggested a frame. Was Blake the killer or a scapegoat? The cloaked figure haunted him. Man or woman, it pointed to someone in Grayson's orbit, someone who knew the alley's secrets. Returning to the Grayson villa, Poirot sought Mei Ling, the housemaid whose quiet presence seemed to thread through every revelation. He found her in the garden, trimming roses with delicate precision. Her eyes flicked up, wary but composed. "Mademoiselle Mei Ling," Poirot said, his tone soft. "You hear much in this house. Did Monsieur Grayson speak of a ledger, perhaps? One detailing his private dealings?" Mei Ling's shears paused, a petal falling to the ground. "Master kept secrets," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I heard him argue with Mr. Chen weeks ago about a book, a ledger. Master said it was hidden, safe, in the study behind a panel." Poirot's pulse quickened. "Show me, if you please." She led him to the study, its walls lined with books and scrolls. At her direction, Poirot pressed a carved panel behind a lacquered screen, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a slim ledger, its pages filled with meticulous entries, dates, names, sums, evidence of Grayson's opium smuggling, a shadow trade funding his tea empire, names of contacts, ports, and payoffs painted a picture of a man dancing on the edge of ruin. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured, closing the ledger. This is a motive for murder, greed, betrayal, or fear of exposure. Did Madame Grayson know of this? Mei Ling's eyes dropped. Mistress suspected. She feared scandal, ruin. She told Master to stop, but he laughed. Her voice held a note of loyalty, yet Poirot sensed she withheld more. He thanked her, tucking the ledger under his arm. As he left the villa, the evening lanterns cast their crimson glow, mirroring the blood that had been spilled. The ledger was a bombshell, implicating Grayson in a dangerous game. Chen, who knew of the opium trade, might have killed to protect his own interests. Eleanor, fearing disgrace, had reason to silence her husband. Even Lily Tan, if promised a share, might have turned vengeful when betrayed. And Blake, with his debt and Curara, remained a shadow in the puzzle. Staw. The Hotel Cathay. Poirot spread the ledger on his desk, his notebook open beside it. He wrote, Ledger. Opium trade. Chen. Greed? Eleanor. Shame? Lily. Betrayal? Blake. Debt or love? Cloaked figure. Local knowledge. The apothecary's words pointed to Blake, but the cloaked figure suggested another hand. Perhaps Mei Ling herself, her loyalty a mask for deeper motives. The alleys had whispered, but their message was incomplete. Poirot leaned back, his fingers brushing his mustache. The killer is close, he said softly, but they hide in plain sight. The little gray cells, they must listen harder. Tomorrow, he would gather the suspects, force their secrets into the light, and let the alley's whispers guide him to the truth. Chapter 7. The Gathering of Suspects. The drawing room of Harold Grayson's villa was a stage set for revelation, its rosewood furniture and silk draperies bathed in the soft glow of porcelain lamps. Hercule Poirot stood at its center, his small, meticulous figure commanding the space with an authority that belied his stature. The air was thick with tension, as if Shanghai's humid breath had seeped through the walls. Around him, seated in a semicircle of unease, were the players in this deadly drama. Eleanor Grayson, her jade bracelet catching the light, Victor Chen, his polished demeanor fraying at the edges, Lily Tan, her silver locket a quiet accusation, Dr. Reginald Blake, his spectacles glinting with nervous sweat, and Mei Ling, the housemaid, her eyes fixed on the floor. Inspector Wu leaned against the doorway, his sharp gaze a silent partner to Poirot's inquiry. Messieurs et mesdames, Poirot began, his voice clear and precise. We are gathered to unravel the murder of Monsieur Harold Grayson, struck down by a curare-tipped dart in the lantern alleys. This was no act of chance, but a crime of calculation, woven with threads of greed, fear, and betrayal. The little gray cells, they have been busy, and now they speak. He paced slowly, his cane a soft punctuation on the polished floor. Let us begin with the facts. Monsieur Grayson was a man of secrets, his tea empire built on a shadow trade, opium smuggling, detailed in a hidden ledger. He produced the slim volume, its presence drawing gasps. Eleanor's hand tightened on her bracelet, Chen's jaw clenched, Lily's fingers brushed her locket. Poirot turned to Chen. Monsieur Chen, you knew of this trade, oui? Your arguments with Grayson, overheard by Mei Ling, suggest you feared exposure or sought to profit alone. Chen leaned forward, his voice tight. I knew, yes, but I urged him to stop. The opium was his scheme, not mine. I bought into Eastern Star to distance myself, not to betray him. I did not kill him. Poirot's eyes flicked to Eleanor. Madame Grayson, you too suspected your husband's dealings. Your fear of scandal was great, was it not? Enough to send warnings, a poisoned dart that grazed a note. Your time is short. You hope to drive him from Shanghai to save your name. Eleanor's composure cracked, her voice trembling. Yes, I sent the note, arranged the first dart to scare him. I wanted him to leave, to protect us, but I did not kill him. I loved him, despite everything. Tears welled, but Poirot's gaze remained unyielding. He turned to Lily. Mademoiselle Tan, you were promised a share in Grayson's business, a promise broken. Your anger was witnessed in the alleys, your ambition clear. Did you seek revenge with a dart of your own? Lily's eyes flashed. I was furious, yes. He dangled wealth, then withdrew it. But I'm no poisoner. I sing for my future, not kill for it. Her hand clutched the locket, its orchid engraving a silent witness. Poirot faced Blake. Doctor, your debt to Grayson was a burden. Your knowledge of curare a coincidence too perfect. The apothecary confirms you bought it, claiming research. Was it for murder instead? Blake's hands shook, his voice rising. I bought curare for study, years ago. I owed Harold, but he never pressed me. I had no reason to kill him. His spectacles slipped, betraying his panic. Finally, Poirot's gaze settled on Mei Ling. Mademoiselle, your loyalty to Madame Grayson is admirable. Yet you see all, hear all. You spoke of arguments, led me to the ledger. But you also watched Lily Tan in the alleys. Do you protect your mistress or conceal your own hand? Mei Ling's head snapped up, her eyes wide. I serve Mistress Eleanor. I told you what I saw to help. I know nothing of darts or poison. Her voice was steady, but her fingers twisted in her apron. Poirot paused, letting the silence press against them. The curare vial in Monsieur Chen's office was a clumsy touch, meant to mislead. The cloaked figure in the alleys, seen by the vendor, knew the paths too well. And the warnings. Why warn a man you mean to kill, to distract, to confuse, to point fingers elsewhere? He held up the ledger. This book reveals Grayson's opium trade, a motive for many, but the true motive lies deeper, in the heart, where love and fear entwine. His eyes scanned the room, each suspect a piece of the puzzle. The killer is among us, and the little gray cells, they see the pattern. Inspector Wu shifted, his voice low. Monsieur Poirot, have you a name? Poirot smiled faintly. Not yet, Inspector. But the threads, they tighten. Tomorrow in these alleys I shall lay a trap. The killer will reveal themselves, for they cannot resist the lure of their own cleverness. As the suspects dispersed, their faces etched with dread, Poirot remained, his mind a whirl of connections. Eleanor's warnings, Chen's rival stake, Lily's broken promises, Blake's curare, Mei Ling's omniscience, each held a truth, but only one held the key. The lantern alleys awaited, their crimson glow a beacon for the final act. The heart, Poirot murmured, it sings a dangerous song, but the mind, it finds the melody. Chapter 8. The Little Gray Cell's Triumph. The drawing room of the Grayson villa was cloaked in the hush of anticipation, its silk draperies and lacquered furniture dimmed by the evening's somber light. Hercule Poirot stood at its heart, his small, precise figure, a beacon of clarity amidst the storm of suspicion. The crimson lanterns of Shanghai's alleys seemed to echo in the room's soft glow, as if the city itself watched the unraveling of its secrets. Around him sat Eleanor Grayson, her jade bracelet a silent confession. Victor Chen, his polished facade cracked. Lily Tan, her locket a weight of unspoken truths. Dr. Reginald Blake, his nervous hands betraying his fear. And Mei Ling, her eyes still fixed on the floor, a shadow of loyalty. Inspector Wu stood by a door, his presence a quiet endorsement of Poirot's method. "Messieurs et mesdames," Poirot began, his voice a measured cadence. "The murder of Monsieur Harold Grayson was a tapestry woven with care, yet its threads betray the weaver. A curare-tipped dart, a hidden ledger, a cloaked figure in the lantern alleys. These are the pieces. And now the little gray cells. They have assembled the truth." He paced, his cane a soft rhythm on the floor. "Let us retrace. Monsieur Grayson was a man of ambition, his tea empire built on opium's shadow. The ledger, found behind a panel, revealed his dealings, a motive for many. But the warnings, the note, the grazing dart, were curious. Why warn a man you intend to kill? To sow fear, to shift suspicion, to create a stage for murder." Poirot turned to Eleanor, his gray eyes piercing. "Madame Grayson, your jade bracelet, so new, so costly, speaks of relief, not grief. You admitted to the warnings, hoping to drive your husband from Shanghai, to save your name from his scandal. But the final dart, was it yours?" Eleanor's composure shattered, her voice a sob. "I sent the note, arranged the first dart to frighten him. I wanted him gone, safe, away from his reckless deals, but I swear I did not kill him." Her hands clutched the bracelet, its green glow a mirror of her desperation. Poirot nodded, then faced Lily. "Mademoiselle Tan, your locket, no heirloom but a gift, perhaps from Grayson, promised you wealth. Your anger at his betrayal was fierce, witnessed in the alleys. Did you seek vengeance with poison?" Lily's eyes blazed, her fingers tight on the locket. "He promised me a future, then laughed it away. Yes, I was angry, but I'm no killer. My songs are my power, not darts." Her defiance rang true, yet Poirot noted the locket's gleam, a token of broken dreams. He turned to Chen. "Monsieur Chen, the curare vial in your office was a clumsy plant, meant to accuse you. Your rival's stake in Eastern Star suggests greed, but your knowledge of Grayson's opium trade was a shared secret. Did you kill to protect it?" Chen's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed strain. "I knew of the opium, urged him to stop. The vial was not mine. Someone framed me. I had no need to kill. His ruin would have been mine too." Poirot's gaze shifted to Mei Ling. "Mademoiselle, your loyalty to Madame Grayson is profound, yet you see all. You led me to the ledger, watched Lily in the alleys. Did you act to shield your mistress or to hide your own hand?" Mei Ling's head rose, her voice soft but firm. "I serve Mistress Eleanor. I told you what I saw to help. I know no poison, no darts." Her eyes met his briefly, then fell, a flicker of fear beneath her calm. Finally, Poirot faced Blake. "Monsieur le Docteur, you bought curare. As the apothecary confirmed, your debt to Grayson was a chain, your care for Madame Grayson a bond of the heart. You knew her fear, her shame. Did you kill to free her?" Blake's spectacles fogged, his voice breaking. I loved Eleanor. I saw her suffer, watched Grayson drag her into ruin. Yes, I bought curare years ago for study, but I swear—" He stopped, his hands shaking, then collapsed into his chair, head bowed. "I did it. I killed him." The room gasped, Eleanor's sob cutting the silence. Poirot raised a hand. "Explain, monsieur." Blake's voice was a whisper. "I followed Harold that night, saw my chance in the alleys. The curare was in my cabinet, unused. I made the dart, struck him, to free Eleanor from his recklessness, his danger. I planted the vial in Chen's office to shift blame, used Mei Ling's gossip to point to Lily." He looked at Eleanor, his eyes wet. "I did it for you." Eleanor's face crumpled, her voice a wail. "Reginald, no, I never asked for this." Mei Ling moved to her side, her loyalty unbroken. Poirot's mustache twitched, his voice calm. "The cloaked figure, Monsieur Blake, was you. The apothecary's word, your debt, your love, they betray you. The little gray cells, they see the heart's folly." Inspector Wu stepped forward, his cuffs ready. "Dr. Blake, you'll come with me." Blake rose, his shoulders slumped, as Wu led him away. Poirot addressed the room. "Madame Grayson, your warnings set this stage, but your heart was not the killer's. Mademoiselle Tan, your ambition was no crime. Monsieur Chen, your secrets were not deadly. Mademoiselle Mei Ling, your loyalty blinded you, but you are innocent." As the suspects dispersed, Eleanor weeping, Lily silent, Chen grim, and Mei Ling retreating, Poirot stood alone. Inspector Wu paused at the door. "Monsieur Poirot, your gray cells are formidable. Shanghai owes you." Poirot smiled faintly. "The alleys whispered, Inspector, and I listened." He left the villa, the crimson lanterns of Shanghai swaying in the night, their secrets laid bare. "The heart," he murmured, "it betrays, but the mind, it triumphs." The city's pulse faded behind him, the case closed, the truth unveiled.